Thrive movement. Foster Gamble.
Together. I've organized a lot of conferences. I know what it takes. It takes a lot. And thank you guys for putting in all the work. And also, especially to Jeff, for the privilege of getting to come and speak to this audience. You know, I travel all over the world. I'm invited to liberal conferences, conservative conferences, science conferences, psychedelic festivals, AT conferences, and so forth. And I'm, like probably a lot of you, I've had the feeling most of my life, what planet am I actually from? And I've always kind of been looking for my tribe. And in the last couple of years, I feel like I finally found it. And it's you. It's not based on race or age or gender or creed or religion. It's based on morality. It's based on ethics. It's based on reason and coherence in consciousness. So for me, it's an absolute vacation and a delight and an honor to come and get to be in conversation with all of you. Because as I sit down with people, I notice that, first of all, the conversation can go anywhere, and it's okay. And then secondly, I'm learning from every conversation because the common denominator is truth-seeking rather than being right or dominating. So thank you. I feel right at home and I love it. So this is what I'm going to be talking about today. If I can put this first slide back up. There's two things I want to talk about. And the first is results, and the second is tools. I'm a very practical guy. I'm a martial artist, athlete, business person, father, husband. I'm trying to live in the real world as best I can. I want to share with you things that can help you do the same as effectively as possible. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is an update on the Thrive movement that has grown out of the movie. And in particular, we're going to talk about the solution because we made the movie that laid out. How many people have seen the movie? Okay, thank you. Great. And for those of you who haven't, it's free online at thrivemovement.com. You know, grab some a glass of wine for during and some chocolate for after and a couple of good friends and sit down and immerse for a couple of hours if you haven't seen it. It will save you some time. But we made the movie not to just make a movie, but as a trailer for the website. And the website is a toolbox for what we anticipated might become a movement. And it has. And what's happened since the film came out is that there are now over 1,000 self-created solutions groups in more than 90 countries around the world. And when we saw that happening, we created what we call a solutions hub on our website, where people can come as individuals to find a group that they want to work with by zip code, by country, or by issue, and where groups can learn from each other, share best practices. So you can go to the website and find a petition on GMOs or a class action lawsuit. Things that people have already created to be effective. You don't have to do it usually again yourself. You can just go to what we call the Resources for Effective Action page and download what someone else has done. So it's been really exciting to see that continues to grow. And there's only two criteria that it takes to be a part of that solutions network. The first is that if you're working in multiple sectors, that you use the same sector titles. This might be a little hard for you to read, but we, along with 10 other groups, over a period of a decade, we sorted out what made the most sense to all of us for identifying the entire realm of human endeavor. It really helps for global collaboration. So these sectors are health and infrastructure and justice and media and relations and economics and environment and so forth. And so if a group is going to be working in multiple sectors, they agree to use the same sector names because that allows us to cooperate and collaborate globally. The second one, and the most important one, is that their solutions cannot involve the creation of any violations, any initiation of force, fraud, or counterfeit against anyone else. As you can imagine, that weeds out a few. But it still leaves over 1,000 groups already that are using solutions which respect the non-aggression principle. So when the film came out, we knew that for security reasons we had to stay under the radar. So we didn't tell anyone until the trailer came out 2 months before the movie. And the trailer came out and basically indicated everything that was going to be in the movies. It was going to be the banking schemes and ETs and free energy and suppression of health cures and so forth. So that's when our risk really started. We were very careful to that point, and we've got a security team that has done a perfect job so far of keeping us safe. But we didn't want to go to film festivals, we didn't want to go to theaters because we have known people who have had their movies stopped or actually been killed before their movies came out when they were dealing with a single topic, and we were dealing with 13 of those type of controversial topics that can ruin your life if the powers that be decide to try to stop you. So it came out on one night, 11/11/11, in 10 languages, and it was already on over 1,000 hard drives around the world, so it could not be stopped. And we were completely blown away by the response. There were 1,500 home screenings the first night where people had invited their friends to see the movie, and they had never seen the movie. So we were very touched by the trust, and they were validated in trusting us. Then it went completely viral, and now it's been seen with documented views, over 71 million views. It's now in 27 languages, and we continues to be seen by at least 1 million people a month. So it's a total confirmation for us of who human beings are. Because for those of you who've seen it, we didn't hold back, and we didn't treat people as stupid. We treated people as very intelligent, very hungry for the truth, and people have really responded. So not only are there, these millions of views and the solutions groups all over the world, but also we've gotten contacted by over 1,000 inventors from countries all over the world, because we went into the free energy devices, the reality of that, and the suppression of that, which has been brutal. I've lost several friends to that. The suppression of cures for cancer, AIDS, chronic fatigue, etc., etc. And I've also lost friends over that. Those of you who are familiar with the health field may know that there have been over 60 mysterious deaths of holistic healers in the last 18 months in the United States. That's a war. And our security team was the best I've ever come across, has now been assigned to a number of the healers who are still alive to protect them. And it's a daily challenge, because there are a lot more cures to be brought out, and I'll tell you more about that later on. So we're contacted by all these inventors, and so I really shifted my own life to spend a lot of time. I spent pretty much the last 3.5 years vetting technologies and vetting non-technical problems that have real breakthrough potential impact in the environment, in economics, and so forth. And this is a representation of the projects that we are focusing on right now. Out of over 1,000 projects, we cut it down to about 500 that looked like they were really serious. And out of those, we've got those in an encrypted database, and we've decided on 70 projects that cover all sectors of human endeavor in such a way that as they get funded and supported, they will go forward together with a synergy that is way more than the sum of the parts. And so you can see in this particular one that the most projects are infrastructure. Most people aren't interested in infrastructure until they find out that's where the free energy projects are. It's amazing what is out there. I'll give you a little bit about technologies that can restore life to a dead coral reef in 60 days. You can decontaminate a small lake in about 72 hours. It's absolutely stunning stuff. But most of these inventors, interestingly enough, are living in Mexico now. Because Mexico is, we have found, the freest, really developed country on the planet right now for these type of breakthrough technologies to actually be allowed in. So we started working with these projects, and we created something called Thrive Connect, which is, we kind of turned inadvertently into a cosmic dating service, where we were connected with inventors and innovators who can change the world with what they've already discovered. And then we're connected with people with significant resources who, many of them, no matter how much they've got, and some of these are billionaires, are very frustrated and very afraid that even with that amount of money, they have not really been able to significantly and beneficially affect the planet that their grandchildren are growing up on. So this is where I'm putting most of my energy now, is into this Thrive Connect project. And this is perfect time for me to be here because we are literally launching the whole Thrive Connect manifestation right now. We launched our first health technology, did a soft launch about 2 months ago at a medically licensed health retreat in Costa Rica. And we're seeing profound results with a state-of-the-art laser-activated stem cell treatment that then also uses the lasers to guide your own activated day-old stem cells, 100 to 200 billion of them, to whatever part of the body most needs healing. And I've experienced it myself, tremendous healing on my, I had a condition in my feet I hadn't been able to get rid of for 10 years, 90% gone in a few weeks. We're seeing quadriplegics get their sensation back in their whole body. A world champion big wave surfer had a torn ACL, and he was about to get surgery. We said, no, try this. 3 weeks later, he was back in the water competing. I can go on and on about that, but that's just a sample of what we're seeing. So one thing I want to say to you now is that we are launching in such a way that we have been promised, as some of you probably have, we've been promised vast funds by the Asian elders who are genuinely looking to release a tremendous amount of their centuries-old gold hoard into the world for humanitarian purposes. You've probably read about that on the internet. Some of you may be holding currencies and so forth. It's extremely real. I've been looking into this for about 4 years now. We've been contacted by 13 different representatives from different dragon families. And Kimberly and I actually spent 3 weeks with them in China. And I'm a pretty informed guy because I've been doing this for decades and I spend about 6 hours a day staying informed. I was in kindergarten with these folks because I'm researching, they're in the middle of it. And we can go into that hopefully in Q&A a little more, but I need to cover some other information. But that we would promise that, but we can't wait for that because they keep trying to release the funds, but the money either gets stolen by the Federal Reserve System or people get poisoned in the process of trying to release it. I've had 3 friends severely poisoned, almost died. Fortunately, they're all still with us, but each time the elders tried to release the funds, something like that happened. They realized, okay, no, we need more security. We need the alternative to the Federal Reserve System, which they now have in the Chinese, the CIP system. And they needed, frankly, to get Obama out of office. They needed to wait until then because he's clearly been working for the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds all along. And so he was the puppet who was stopping the release of funds.
Yes.
So I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but next month, in a couple of, we're almost there, in a couple of weeks, I'm holding a private conference at a remote location in Mexico where I'm bringing together our 4 top inventors in health, energy, agriculture, and environment with 7 to 10 very wealthy individuals or people who run investment funds that are specifically looking for impact investments at the leading edge of health, environment, energy, and agriculture and education. So this is going to be the real launch, and I say this because if there are any of you who either have funds that you want to put into this type of thing, or you have business skills that could help. We've got, out of this conference that's coming up, we've got easily 25 products that are earth-changing, for which we will, some of them already have business teams, but we're going to be building business teams around and probably bringing most of them out in Mexico or Central America first. I've already met half a dozen people here at least who have the kind of skills that we're looking for. So if you have either those skills or resources, want to be involved in this, contact me. I'll be leaving on Tuesday morning. Contact me before we go, because this is an incredibly exciting time of launching this. And this meeting is not only to do the science education and to do to arrange the next level of funding, but it's also a strategic session where we're bringing our security team together as well and really planning, okay, and ask yourself this question: if you had the cure for cancer, if you could heal coral reefs and decontaminate the rivers and lakes, what would you do with it? How would you get that out in a way that you were safe, the knowledge was preserved, and ultimately the world has access to it? So that's a thrilling challenge to have, but it's nevertheless a risky and complex one. Okay, so we're seeing already, amongst just the inventors that we're working with, very real cures for AIDS, chronic fatigue, MS, ALS, and many, many more. The two main doctors that we're working with are working at a level where they can actually restore wholeness to your cells. And just let that sink in for a minute, because that means you can affect virtually every affliction, because they all end up as the collapsing wholeness of your cells. We've got another person that we're working with who has developed a way to extract from organic vegetables these particular enzymes and then mix them in a little organic cocktail that he's now using. He's in his second clinical study with type 1 and type 2 diabetics, and he's getting 100% record of getting these patients off the insulin as long as they follow the protocols. Usually about 20% of them go off the dietary exercise protocols or don't take the cocktail or whatever. But anybody who's doing it is actually in it. So obviously it's a global epidemic, and it's really huge. He's working on his second study in China right now, and his third one's going to be in Costa Rica. The hemolucent is the laser technology that I described to you before. We've got a website that says as much as the FDA allows us to say about it, so just look out hemolucents. That means blood and light on the internet, and you'll see what we're doing with that. In terms of energy, we've got self-running battery chargers. We've got a very inexpensive technology that on millivolts boils water in 8 seconds. Let that sink in for a minute too. That's what nuclear, coal, all these power plants, that's all they're doing is boiling water to create steam. So suppose you could do that with just a very clever arrangement of vortices, of energy vortices that create that effect in water. Radiant energy battery charger and several over-unity motor generators. This is a picture of one of them. But this guy's lab was raided by an FBI SWAT team, and he and his wife, their lives were threatened, and he's had to move into the health field for now. But the moment that we get one of these technologies out, it'll be like the electric car. Once it's out, then all the would-be controllers will be just turning to get a piece of the action and try to control it like Monsanto's trying to do with marijuana right now. So the key to this is the torus, like we talked about in Thrive. This is the fundamental energy pattern of the universe. Every sustainable system, from subatomic to galactic clusters, if it's sustainable, it's got a toroidal energy field. And one of the keys for me in recognizing that is that when we looked at our problems in our Solutions Hub network, there are close to 300 different issues that are being addressed by these groups all over the world. That can be overwhelming, and it was for the Occupy movement. It just got dissipated because the Occupy movement was struggling for a compass, and they just kept falling into politics rather than principles. But because of the principles that are centering all of our solutions group, they just continue to grow. We don't need to micromanage them. They either succeed or they don't. But they're all working with these principles of sustainability and fundamentally, interpersonally, with the non-aggression principle. For me, in my life, there have been 3 really major discoveries. Not like I invented anything, but just my realizations. And the first was, I was an athlete in college and then a martial artist, but I never could really commit my spirit 100% to the self-defense that I was studying and training in until I found the art of Aikido. And for the first time, there was a philosophy of non-aggression, but self-protection, with a full physical expression. I spent the next 15 years training and teaching, and I use it now. I'm not training on the mat anymore, but I use it in everything that I do because it is an expression of what we're all here for. The second one was free energy. When I saw the first working free energy devices working, it just brought tears to my eyes because, first of all, I was looking at a device that has this pure white light, where it was sparking white rather than gold. The energy was running cold instead of hot, and it was running itself. It's like, I just had this moment of realization, not just that, oh, this technology can really help economically all over the world, but no, this is confirmation that we, in fact, are living in a sea of infinite abundance. And then the third one for me was the discovery of the Liberty Principles. And my coach on that was my son. As I was just beginning to make Thrive, he was just finishing a project which took him 6 years. After he got out of college, he came to me and he said, Dad, he said, this is going to sound really weird, but in order to know where I'm going to put my energy in life, I need to figure out how the hell this planet works because I don't get it. And I said, fantastic, let me know what you come up with. So he spent 3 years really researching like crazy and following the money. And then he came back to me and he said, okay, so we spent days together, and he was basically downloading about the banking schemes and about all the various conspiracies. He said, but listen, the single most important thing that I found is the non-aggression principle. And thank God he did that and related to me before we actually got into the thick of making the film, because the punchline of Thrive was, when you can operate in relation to the non-aggression principle, we can actually be on a planet that's thriving. And I want to plug his book because he spent the next 3 years writing and publishing a book. It's called The Secrets of Nonviolent Prosperity, The Principles of Liberty, and you can get that online, either electronic or hard copy. His name is Trevor Gamble, and I owe an infinite debt of gratitude. So listen to your kids, listen to the younger generation. You might have been here longer, but that doesn't mean that that they don't know a lot of things that we don't know. Great. Why don't we have these solutions out in the world? 2 things, basically. Lack of adequate funding and suppression. I've addressed each of those. So what's in the way of our fulfilling our visions in relation to these values? Well, it's the dominant control system that everybody has been talking about. And this is a pyramid that we constructed for Thrive. And I keep sending this to people when I see these debates between the left and the right and so forth. I keep sending them, and I say, just study this. If you really think that these presidents are in charge, just look at the pyramid, because the government is like level 2, just above us. And then you've got the corporations, you've got the big banks, you've got the national central banks, you've got the international central banks, then you've got the BIS, and then you've got all the secret societies and all that above that. So any of these politicians, nasty as they are, they're puppets for at least 6 or 7 levels above them. So that's the main thing that's in the way. So I don't want to have to wait to get these solutions out until the state is gone, because I'll be gone probably. So I'm really trying to use my Aikido training to be strategic on how to get these technologies out. And Ed Griffin and Bob Podolsky and a bunch of us were brainstorming last night how to do that. And we're working with about 7 different strategies right now. But the main one is that I'm trying to sit the best inventors down with the most humanitarian philanthropists and go, listen, you guys, if you're trying to save the planet for your grandchildren, you can put up $100 million in an escrow account, and you can put proven working plans for a free energy device in another escrow account. Then on day X, we release both of those. And then the first time that 3 other inventors have replicated that technology, then the inventor gets the second 50 million. Then it's out. The moment that goes on the internet, that inventor is safe for the first time probably in a decade. So that's one strategy. There are many others, but we were talking last night that could really work for health technologies as well. It's a little more complicated because actually being able to create and practice the type of technological healing that we're seeing would take actually more than building a free energy device, but we're working on creating an institute here in Mexico where we bring together the best practitioners, and they will be, as well as healing, they will be teaching others how to do what they do. So in terms of suppression on the health front, one of our doctors, he had all of his culture stolen that he spent 10 years creating. There was a threat on his life. Another one is, as we speak, under harassment in Florida with ELF bombardment whenever he's in his lab. There have been raids on labs. As you probably know now, just as a side, they're not only going after free energy inventors and healers, they're going after raw food growers. They don't want vegetable gardens in your yard. So the common denominator of all these solutions is wholeness. What we found in the hundreds of issues that our group is working on is that the problem always is a breakdown in the wholeness of a natural system. So whether it's GMOs and pesticides breaking down the wholeness of a natural growing ecology, or fiat money, fractional reserve breaking down the wholeness of voluntary exchange, I really want you to get that it's as simple as that. This is not overwhelming intellectually. It's like all of these different issues that break down in the wholeness of the natural system. So if we can recognize that, and we can also know how to effectively restore the wholeness of that natural system, then that's where we need to go. And all the inventors that we're working with are in fact doing that. Okay, so that's all I have time to go over on the solutions and invention side, but I can just tell you, I put out a blog yesterday morning. I suggest you check on it on the website. It's called An Encouraging Look Forward, because I see this political disparity and all of the despair that's going on, and it's not the way I see it. I mean, certainly we're still in real trouble, but the themes that I'm seeing emerging are so encouraging to me in terms of what's being exposed, in terms of the solutions that we already have. So, and the whole Trump issue, I think you'll find interesting perspective if you check out that blog at probablemente.com. Okay, so let's move forward now to the second part of the talk, which is how to talk about liberty, how to talk about freedom, so that people actually want to listen. Every single person in this room, I guarantee you, has been dealing with that issue, and yet it hardly ever gets talked about. Larkin Rose is talking about it really well. He did an amazing seminar a couple of nights ago about it, and he's developing an interactive software program that will help us all cut through the challenge of that. But I want to share some of what Kimberly and my wife and I, she was the co-creator of Thrive, I want to share some of what we have been learning works and doesn't work in that conversation, in hopes that it can save you from a lot of the pain that we've experienced in our conversation. Of course, we've all lost friends over the illusion of political polarity. And also, I just look back on a lot of times when I had really good intentions, but I just blew it. I brought up the global domination agenda at some kid's birthday party. I learned that satanic pedophilia doesn't go over great at weddings. So timing is a critical issue. But one of the main things that I've learned, and I really learned it from Larkin, he contacted us one time when he had just done a seminar that he said was 100% successful for the first time. with people who weren't familiar with the liberty principles. And so we got on Skype for an hour and a half and said, coaches, how did that happen? And he really laid out how to start with shared values. Because virtually every human being, if they're not psychopathic, really wants humanity to be experiencing having enough food, water, and shelter, and health, and security, and education, electricity, to have a clean environment, have opportunity, prosperity, to be experiencing love. That's a lot of commonality. It's really probably 95%. That doesn't even get into politics. So the discussion, once you establish the common values, and then hold up our current systems and get on the same page that, okay, that's not working, no, this was not working over here, then you're on the same team trying to figure out, okay, what might actually work. The other thing that I recommend, another thing, is ask questions. Don't go into these conversations wanting to download all of your hard-won information into a mind that hasn't opened to it yet. So this is really the Aikido of rather than kind of smashing up against someone, you look, you see where they're coming from, you step aside, you kind of turn around and say, oh, that's how they're seeing things, and then blend with that. And questions, I find, is the best way. That allows me just to relax, not to hold my breath, and just ask a question like, well, if there were a way to have accessible, good roads, education, healthcare, help for the poor, respected systems of justice, on and on, without anyone being violated against their will, with taxation and tyranny and so forth, would you want that? As you probably know, if you try to ask a question like, a lot of people don't even want to answer that question because they can feel the contradiction coming up inside themselves. But it's a great place to start. And either they're left thinking about that contradiction or they're actually talking about, yeah, I would like that, but it's not possible. So another thing that I have found really effective is how did a few people get the power to suppress all these solutions? And this has been the most effective thing that I've found recently. I've been really studying the history of liberty, particularly how would things like security and justice, how could those things work without the state? And one of the things that I came across is several coinciding histories of the predator class. And just in a nutshell, I start off in workshops, but I've got a couple of talks coming up at major liberal conferences, and I've been having some success at recent ones with posing that question and saying, okay, imagine once upon a time, back when human beings first figured out agriculture, and all of a sudden they didn't need to be on the move all the time. They didn't need to be hunting and gathering. They could actually stay put and start to grow things, and, keep their harvests over the winter and save their seeds and all that kind of stuff. Then another group of people decided, hey, they're doing all the work. We can just move around and steal their stuff. And that was the rise of the predatory class. And initially it was just done, of course, with obvious force. But then the predatory class started to go, no, wait a minute. They're staying put. We're having to move around all the time. It's dangerous to be attacking and all that stuff. So we got to come up with an invention where they'll actually agree to give us their stuff. So royalty was invented. Some guy who just clobbered a bunch of people, put a crown on his head and said, okay, now when you give me your stuff, you're giving it to the king. And by the second or third generation, it's like, okay, we just owe a certain amount of our stuff to the king, and the royalty, and so forth. But then people figured out royalty, and they began to figure out the priesthood, and so forth. So they actually had to invent the notion of a democracy. So that they go, oh, well, I guess we decided that. It wasn't what I wanted, but I guess the group did, and all that stuff. So, as Martin Luther King said, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. If you look back, from the pharaohs to democracy, we're bent in really good directions, but the key is we're not there yet. And so what we're all doing here, what excites me so much, is we're exploring to how to get rid of the rest of the state and actually have a workable, free civilization that aligns with human motivations and natural principles. And I describe to people, it's so nice not to have to try to convince anyone of this stuff here, but I'm just sharing what I found helpful. I use a three-legged stool because If people understand that there are dispute resolution organizations and independent security companies, private insurance groups that all have to compete with each other in the free market and all are held individually liable at the human level for any violations at all. I've been studying this intensely now for 10 years, and I'm absolutely convinced that this will work, that it has worked whenever it's been allowed to be, tried it in the past. And I'm writing a book now on these principles and on the history and how to transition. We laid this out quickly in the movie, but just for a quick review, what we see is basically a three-stage transition, where the first stage is bringing integrity to current systems and helping those most in need. And frankly, I'm just kind of stunned that I thought that would be like a Dennis Kucinich or somebody, more on the progressive side. But actually, I see Trump doing a lot of that stuff. Second stage, once that transition is happening, is shrinking government to the protection of individual rights in the commons. That's more of a Ron Paul, Ed Griffin type of model. And then finally, I think by that time, it's going to be so obvious to people that you can't let the state continue, that will move into a society of voluntary association. So then I go through success stories, where it's already happened. Northern England, America in the 1800s, Sweden and Denmark in the early 20th century, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Silicon Valley, eBay, Craigslist, your relationships. So here's the key point for the transition is that the transition can't be coercive either. So these three stages are more an observation of what I assumed would happen naturally as people became more aware. And what I've found in my research, gotta get forward one. What I found in my research is these things are already happening. There are over 90% of the legal cases in the United States are being resolved privately. And there are more private police officers in the United States than there are public police officers. I could go on and on about the ways that it's happening already. So sorry I didn't have time for questions, but I hope that this is helpful both in terms of having a realistic and optimistic attitude toward solutions and also having effective ways to communicate. So thank you very much.